Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Western Balkan Demo Day winter edition. Today it's our 10th birthday party at the Impo Hub. And we are just about half hour away from the party, so bear with us. um, Today I'm totally in the mood for reflecting. I'm totally in the mood for actually celebrating, for um, being thankful for all of the entrepreneurs like, Nora there. We've seen so many people, we've seen so many startups, and they've done fantastic things. They will do even more. And I've been working, collaborating with Mickey. I think it's been
2 years for sure.
even more, I
Yeah.
think. A bit over 2 years. And from the very beginning, actually, I knew that I really liked the style of how you manage things, how you communicate, how you envision growth and expansion, how you talk to founders. I've always felt very much empowered by our exchanges. And I always thought, oh my God, I think it would be fantastic for Miki to work with some founders from Serbia to bring a little bit of that attitude that is very much making space, right? Instead of bringing barriers. Here we're a lot more, I would say, used to having impediments to saying, oh, we cannot do that, we shouldn't do that, this will never fly, or whatever the case is. And with Meek, it's not like, hey, you can do anything you want whenever you want, because it doesn't matter. It's if you put yourself to it, and if that's what you really feel, hey, let's roll our sleeves and let's get to it and see how you want to get to the end of it. And it really, really, really got me thinking about how do we bridge where we're right now in terms of leadership to where we need to be. No need to mention what's happening at the global level in terms of the models that we are faced with in terms of leading. But we want to change that as well from our daily practices and perspectives. So without further ado, let me just ask you a little bit about how do you see the gaps today? How you've been actually here in between Belgrade and Montenegro, right?
Right.
For the
Primarily.
primarily for the past at least 1 year,
Yeah.
even though your business is and your life actually is based in the US. So if you could just give your perspective of the gaps in leadership that you see today, spanning from your experience with founders in this region in Serbia and your hospitality expertise in the US, and a little bit sort of contextualizing where you come from.
Hi, everyone. Mickey, everybody can hear me okay? So the question is bridging the gap between a thought process like mine, which is basically US process. I have been, my entire career has been in the US. I've worked globally, Asia, Middle East, Africa, everywhere, North America. So leadership is very different, obviously, in places in the world. If we take a look at here locally and in this region primarily, I feel that there's a lot of separation between leadership and the people who are actually executing the work. Right now, more than ever, I think leaders must take control of their destiny. And that's from top to bottom. It doesn't mean that leaders have to do everything. Certainly not. There's teams everywhere. But when we look at facing growth, which is now everybody needs to be concerned about growth. Every leader should be trying to figure out where it is that we're going to go, where are we going, not only our vision, but how our vision is going to execute to the customer experience, to marketing, to how is it that we're going to get to where we're going in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, what's our plan? Leaders have to take control today more than ever because of social media, because of it just runs away with you. Marketing goes everywhere. The people's perspectives, competition, everything is changing at a very rapid pace. So
Yes, but
really
you're
coming
saying
in,
this, right? And so it's really hard because
it's very
we
hard.
hear a lot of voices into our head, what we should be, how we should look like, how we should behave. And it depends whether you're a woman, whether you're a man, whether you're you know, different gender. And it depends whether you are in Serbia or you're in the United States. The point is, how do you know where you're going if you don't know, you know, what you want to be like, right?
Right, right.
So how do you cope with that? How do you see do you see that happening at this point? Is that an issue in leadership?
It is an issue in leadership, and vision is where you're going. Where we are going always is the vision of either my company or where the company is going. Very important. And as long as that's your North Star, everybody understands what North Star is. As long as that is your North Star, everything needs to surround and go in that general direction. So that has to be the foundation of everything that you do as a leader. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to know everything, but someone on your team and everybody on your team needs to know where your North Star is.
What do you think? Because okay, let's take a little practical example because you have many. You have smaller teams, you have startup teams, you have companies, right, that you
Right.
work with. Where do you, at this moment in time, see that there is something that is not working in that equation? Like vision, where we're now, where we're starting from, and what's our next step? Do you see something that is not happening there?
I
And
go ahead.
and if you can sort of give us an example of maybe a company, maybe a startup, maybe a founder who either has a clear vision or doesn't, and that you've maybe work with and can say, well, this was a good approach, this wasn't so much, or
Yeah.
what have you.
The approach, I recently was working with a company that had the vision. They just didn't have the communication skills to tell the entire team what it is that they needed to execute. And there becomes a disconnect. The leader was always looking, where are we going? What are we doing? How's this going? How's that going? There was a disconnect always with coming back to the end result because there was no communication. Communication is going to be the number one thing. So the one example of a not doing well is a leader who didn't communicate on a regular interval. So that causes confusion. That causes where everybody's going in their own direction. Everybody's doing what they think, and there is an assumption made as to what outcomes are required. So that is one of the teams that I worked with here in
I'm
Serbia.
sorry, how big was the team?
It was a small team. It was probably about 50 people in
Okay,
total.
50.
50.
Okay.
So, and that's including development teams, marketing teams, the whole thing. So they had, everybody seemed to be doing their own direction.
So,
And
but so just to understand the structure, so everybody's clear about this. So you had one CEO and
one CEO
one
and
CEO.
leadership team.
Okay. And then like 49 people doing their own thing, or how did it work?
No, in like the development team, there was probably about 20 in the development team alone.
Okay.
So development team oversee on the, and each team had their own leadership.
Okay.
And then everybody reported to the leadership team, CEO, OO. There was a VP of marketing, et cetera.
Okay.
So each one had their leadership team. But there was not communication between everybody. Everybody was
What
doing
do you mean
thing.
by communication? Communication means so many things.
Right. So communication looks like I have a marketing team that's in touch with the customers, but the development team doesn't know what the customers want. Right. So the marketing team knew that from the customer perspective, sales and marketing, the team that was doing the development actually was only looking at systems, only looking at efficiency, but not using the customer's perspective as to why and what changes need to be done and the priorities in order to meet the customer's needs. So that's where
So the leadership was not connected. So the
leadership was
people
not
that
making that
led the
jet.
different
Yes.
parts of the startup
Yes.
were not aligned.
Yes.
Is that
So when we were looking at how to go together and get together, the company used to say, especially with the development team, that the development team would put customers in a black hole because the development team wouldn't get back to them fast. The development team didn't, if they needed to change anything, it took a long time to do, whereas customer needs something immediately. The development team is doing it at their own pace. So there is a disconnect between what the customers want and what the team is giving them at the end and how quickly it is. That requires someone, the leadership team primarily, that's going to bring all of these pieces together and organize them and create a priority for the entire organization.
right? So how do you see that the leadership team should have worked differently than it did to make
Okay.
that happen?
The bottom line is if leadership team is going to prioritize customer experience, for example, whatever it is, and we're going to use this as an example, customer experience has to be the basis of every single department and every single structure's goal.
How does that look like, for example?
That looks like, so we're going to prioritize, once again, on the development team, we are going to prioritize the customer experience to do that. So all of the efficiency is going to have to be done customer first. For example, customers are not happy with the way that something's happening from a technology standpoint. I'm not getting a response in, I keep getting a problem with this action. Okay. So if that action is where the customers need and the development team is working on updating a product in a different direction, you have a disconnect. Okay. So the leadership team is saying, okay, we want to go ahead and develop better, but we have to fix this before we go on to the next step. It's creating organizational structure to meet the needs of that customer.
Right. So do methodologies that we have at hand right now, like Scrum, right? Do they help in this
Yes.
situation? Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you think that these are very much still actual and can be implemented?
Right. Here's the thing about a lot of these, and I have to tell you, having worked with many, many organizations, there's a lot of tools that are out there. There's not enough training and comprehension in order to execute it well. So if you're going to have a lot of tools at your disposal, which I recommend everybody does because it's important, everybody needs to be on the same page with tool utilization. So that becomes part of the communication piece. That becomes part of how improvement piece. Everybody's on the same page with the tool that we're using, for example.
Why, apart from, I think it's fairly simple to understand the Scrum methodology, taken as an example.
Right.
Why isn't it then mainstream or operationalized?
I'll give you one
Yes.
reason, and that is because everybody is busy.
Okay.
Does everybody know that feeling?
Okay.
Everybody's busy and utilization starts diminishing to a point at which it's a tool that it's underutilized and or forgotten long term. It must be part of the communication process. So everybody's on the same page.
Well, that means that
Underutilization, I
right.
think, is the biggest thing that is standing in the way.
So does that mean though that the leadership team needs to sort of plan for a more stretched time to reach the bottom line of the business in terms of money?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. And how much do you think that it's in terms of like, is it more 20% of time? Because I know that the sales team usually is always like, no, you guys have to sell. And if you don't sell this, then you don't get your bonus. Or
Yeah,
right? That's
right.
this sort of time situation. And that's why everybody just goes like a hamster, like in a circle.
Yeah,
Whether that works or not, it's none of their concern. It's just that they got to do it.
right.
Yeah. So the indicator and the target indicator itself, I try and, I mean, if I'm understanding well
Yeah.
what you're saying, the target indicator itself is not appropriate because in that amount of time that they have, they cannot get to that result if they don't have certain processes in place, right?
Correct. That has to be part of the process. And it has to be where that becomes the default versus, and everybody goes with the, I'm too busy to use the tool. But if that tool becomes your default, then it's much.
Is that a
easier.
default in other teams that you've seen in the US? Because I mean, even in the US, I mean, everybody is super busy and they're very,
Everybody's super
very
busy.
efficient
Yeah.
about time. And
It's a matter of priority. It's a
Okay.
matter of making it a priority and pulling it into everyday work.
which is an investment from
It's an
the
investment
leadership side, right? At the beginning.
investment in training and communication and making sure that everybody understands why are we using this tool? How many of you have had just using tools randomly going, why am I bothering with this? It's someone's imposing their, you have to do this. And they say, because everybody's clear, because it's going to be helpful. But at the end of the day, will it help us achieve our success? Yes or no? And if we are able to communicate how this achieves success, it makes it much better. And that is the leadership communication that must occur. Otherwise, you're just throwing tools at me and I'm too busy and I just can't get to it. And I'd love to, but it becomes overwhelming. I worked with one company, literally, they had a tool for everything. And next thing you know, people were going, I'm so overwhelmed, I can't use any of them. Each one of their tools were underutilized. And it was, I mean, they ended up doing something as simple as a flow chart versus using a lot of the technical tools that they had in their, because nobody was using. And it became super inefficient. Nobody knew what each other were doing. That's what happens.
Yeah. So let me ask you this one more question. You seem to actually attribute to the leadership a lot of responsibility,
Mhm.
right? which usually is the case for the failure of a business. On the other hand, is there something cultural about it? Because in my experience here, especially not only in Serbia, I would say like in Europe and in Southern Europe, I'm Italian, so I'm certainly seeing that there. There's very much this tendency, if you're not the owner, if you're not the CEO, if you're not like people are like, that's really not mine. And I do what I'm told to do, and that's the end of it.
Yeah.
Right. I take my earnings monthly, and anything else is beyond me, right?
Right.
So there's very much disconnect, as you say, a gap, whatever you want to call it. I think that we are going in at this time through more of a shared sort of responsibility in terms of ownership, right?
Right.
Of what we do. So it is ultimately the leaders, but it's not only on them. It's how, everybody else receives, takes and gives back,
Yeah.
what's in them. So I'm just wondering if you see
Yeah.
some dynamics in there.
I'll give you an example. Working here in Serbia specifically, I worked with a Swiss company that was coming into the region for about a year and a half. And I was working with the CEO and the COO, trying to help them organize, build business, increase their market share, the usual stuff. And the team, their team, it was a small team. There was 25 people in the company. And everybody would come to me and would say, I want to do this. What do you think we should do? I always said to them, and this is very American, so I know that this is something that's a lot of times not comfortable here in this region, but I would say, well, what do you think? And it was like, don't know. It's like, okay, the next time you come to me and say, this is what I think, this is what I want to change. This is where my rationale comes from. I got them after a year of work from tell me what to do, and now I'm going to tell you what I think, and then we're going to make a decision
But
together.
you did get them to that point.
It took a long time. It took a long time. But if you can get, as leaders in here, if you can get your team to engage with the process of decision making, as long as they know what your vision is, what your North Star is, where you're going with the company, if you can get them engaged, especially the young team, they want to know why it is that they're doing it. It's easy as a leader just to say, do this, no, do that, come over here. Why did you do this? And you're done. That's leadership, kind of old school. New school is really getting everybody engaged in why it is that you're doing what you're doing in a company. As a leader, my outcomes need to be that everybody's excited about doing their job well, engaged in the overall success. That's communication. We talked about communication as a very important part. That's communicating, not only just do this and do that and instruction, but engaging in the success overall. It's a long time coming. And I know some of you who are CEOs specifically understand this. It's time consuming as a leader.
It's an
to
investment. It's a big investment.
And you have to repeat. So over a year's time of working with this company, the team would come to me and say, okay, and they were excited. Okay, Mickey, this is what I think. This is what we want to do. Whatever. And we'd go, okay, go do it. I don't like that idea. And then we'd problem solve. Takes time. This is something that takes a little bit of time, but is
Do
something
you see
that's worth
results
it.
in terms of revenue?
The answer is yes. The answer is
Awesome.
yes. And the reason that there is revenue is because there's a shared success. Everybody shares in the success. And it's something that I think leaders who have this in their mindset, it's also a trained thing for a leader to do this, because it is easy sometimes just to go, no, do this and move on, because that takes how much, 2 seconds to do. The actual part of having that collaboration is the hard part, but it's so worth it in the end.
Kudos for that. Fantastic example. I love it. So I'll consult with you
Yeah,
about,
good.
this engagement strategy of yours. Do you see sort of nuances and differences between what you've already sort of mentioned, the newer generation and the generation of people who are not um millennials or Gen Z or
Yeah.
whatnot, right? And I don't know, I do feel from one perspective, sharing with you and everybody, that younger people have definitely an interest in
Yes,
understanding a lot more what the aim is, right? And really they have to resonate with that,
right.
which is, I think, fantastic, because it's all about how do you want the world to look like,
Yeah.
right? At some point.
I think youth is invested.
It's very invested because they've seen it from us that we build something that really they don't want to live in.
Exactly.
They're just like, oh hell with that, you do that, I ain't gonna work for 12 hours straight and building something I don't even know what it's used for, right? But at the same time, there's still something that is not fully happening, right? And it's all fully integrated, and there's some missing link,
Right.
I feel, right? Is it generational? Is it something else? Is it operational? What do you think about that?
A lot of it is generational. Not all of it. There's, culture, there's a lot of things that are involved in this. But at some point, you've got to make a determination as a leader who is in it for a short time. I work from, let's say, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And once 4 p.m., I'm out of the door. That's fine. If somebody does not want to share in the shared experience of leadership, success, the whole thing that I'm talking about, that's fine. You can't make someone do it, but what you can do is make them have a purpose while they're there, right? Make them feel that they're part of it, even if they have what we call in America a short-term mentality, meaning I'm in, I'm out, see you later. And I don't want to think, I'm turning off my phone when I go home and that's it. But
Have you seen that? Because we see a lot of that.
we see a lot of that.
You
still.
do?
But
Okay.
during the work day, you still need to get them involved. The people who don't want to be there after hours or don't want to talk after hours, that's fine. Everything's fine. But making them still feel that they're part and parcel during the course of the day is going to be important all the way around. Everybody's buy-in.
And are they happy with that?
Generally, yes.
Okay.
Because I don't want to make someone do something that they're not ready to do. You know what I mean? As a leader, I don't want to make someone feel that they need to do more than they're willing to give.
I agree. I totally agree. I just see this sort of time equation that is a constant in what is happening a lot of times, and people do get very much tired.
Yeah.
Right? They get tired, and everything catches up with them, and they don't have this time to integrate, and they don't have this time to catch up and understand, okay, so we did a series of things, what happened out of it, right? So now we are sort of stretching the targets because we can't reach them in the time that we've set from the beginning because we want to make time for people more and for communication more and for interactions and engagements and so on and so forth. But then the results are further along the line, and still the new generation wants result faster.
Yeah.
So there's still something that doesn't add up
Right. Right.
in that. And I'm raising all of this because I think we're all living it. We here at the Impact Hub, and I guess the companies and the startups and everybody, right?
Yeah.
We see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the communicating. I keep coming back to the word communication. And the one thing that is very important is repetition, repetition, repetition.
Oh.
I've been using the word communication tonight because it's really important. When you look at your own team, the repetition in communication is very critical. When you have someone who is kind of not bought in, which is kind of what you're asking, correct?
Mm-hmm.
When you have someone who's not exactly bought in, you still need to say, you can't say, oh, I'm going to speak some differently to someone over here that's bought in compared to someone that is not bought in over there. It still has to be the same communication. It still has to be the same enthusiasm. It still has to be the same shared goals. It still has to be the same. The only difference.
So it's this I would say constants, or like alignment in what
Absolutely.
we envision, in how we communicate it, in how we engage people, in how we have
That's the leader. That's
interpersonal,
the leader.
right,
Yeah.
relationships, and that actually can make up for something that didn't really realize in the amount it was maybe envisioned or planned or something of the sort.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mickey, I see that the jury's ready
back.
here,
I saw
and
that.
and I think that we're ready to find out who the winner is today.
Okay.
So
Wonderful.
thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure.
I think we just actually started to scratch
Yeah.
the surface, and I'm hoping to have a lot more conversations on this one with
Yes.
you. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.